Hello, everybody. It is my pleasure to speak at the 2020 Interpret Europe conference that is held as so many events these days as an online event. And first and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for their stamina in holding on to the plans for this conference under such difficult circumstances. Speaking to you at a conference on fostering heritage communities is actually a special honor, since it allows me to feature a key ingredient of the Council of Europe's work in the cultural sector, the Faro Convention on the Value of Cultural Heritage for Society. This year, in 2020, we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the European Convention on Human Rights, and Faro, in my view, is a beautiful product in this overall human rights framework. I want to take you now on a journey to Faro land, a wonderful place that stretches from everywhere to everywhere. On the journey, we will look at the origins of this unique convention, its meaning, applications, challenges ahead, and finally, we will look at heritage workers and users, and at those who give meaning and stories to it, to see whether actually these may be the same people. But first, a bit of background to Faro land. Since the 1960s, the Council of Europe has been at the forefront on heritage issues as an integral part of development. The Granada Convention on Architectural Heritage and the Valletta Convention on Archaeological Heritage are well-known results of this work. Through its intergovernmental and professional cooperation, the organization also drew up codes of good practice and a multitude of recommendations to supplement the conventions. The slide gives you an idea of many major tools, but also in the international context, tools by other organizations. Now, changes in the European political context and the advent of globalization called for a review of the concept of heritage. And that was meaning to move beyond the concept of protection and promotion of heritage towards an interest in the relationship between citizens and the heritage itself. What it means, what it represents in terms of individual and group perception. So here we can speak about a real paradigm change. Our Committee of Ministers entrusted the Steering Committee for Cultural Heritage to prepare a new reference instrument. And this new instrument actually reflects the concept that taking part in cultural life of a community, enjoying the arts, etc., fall within the fundamental rights of the individual as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948, but also guaranteed by the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, an instrument dating back to 1966. The new tool was then adopted by the Committee of Ministers in 2005 as a framework convention, entered into force in 2011, and to date, that is today, it has 19 member states who ratified and 6 others who have already signed the convention. So now, what is new? What is really new? I'll give you the specificities of the Faro Convention in a nutshell. We have the concept of heritage communities, defined as a variable geometry beyond any reference to ethnicity or other narrow concepts or ideas. The focus on ascribed values rather than tangible or intangible aspects of heritages. The concentration on cooperation between the diverse heritage communities. The link to human rights and democracy, cultural heritage hence as a source and a resource for the exercise of human rights, and we already mentioned that before. And finally, the convention's consistency with cultural values in the environment, territorial identity, landscape, and the environmental dimension of heritage. So all this is new. And consequently, the main Faro principles that reflect the ambition to use cultural heritage for the benefits of the whole of society can be listed as, again in a nutshell, developing democratic participation and social responsibility. So this is all about the citizens. Improving the living environment and the quality of life. Enhancing more cohesive societies. And managing cultural diversity and mutual understanding. Now, if it is not the objects and the places themselves that are important for heritage and important about cultural heritage, but the meanings and the uses that people attach to them, then of course the act of interpretation and mediation becomes key. And that is why today's conference is so significant. Let us now look at Faro in practice. And to do this, we study specific aspects related to the principles. For instance, as regards integration. Let us travel to Transylvania, Romania, to show you the whole village project. With the help of the Mihai Eminescu Trust, this initiative wants to preserve the Saxon heritage in the intercultural village of Viskri. The action focuses on turning the local heritage into a resource for the remaining Roma population of the village, so as to enable them to make the best use of this heritage through tourism, agriculture, craftsmanship, and many more activities. Now imagine, Roma communities protect and promote Saxon heritage in a Romanian village. That is really interculturalism at its best, I would say. As for developing the democratic participation and social responsibility principle, let us travel to Serbia. I introduce you to the Almatski Kraj project in the city of Novi Sad. This is an initiative to draw attention to the rich heritage of Almatski Kraj neighborhood and actively engage the citizens in the preservation to develop the city, develop in an overall comprehensive perspective. As Novi Sad is going to be the European Capital of Culture in 2021, they are trying to tackle overall issues and challenges related to migration, conflict, reconciliation, youth unemployment, Roma discrimination, gender equality, inequality, and so on, through heritage work, the sustainable use of heritage. There would be many, many more examples regarding social responsibility, past experiences, and so on, from Rome, from Bella Monaca neighborhood, but we don't have the time. So I'm unfortunately not in a position to tell you details about all these outstanding initiatives, but you find more information on our website. What we learned from these and many more examples is indeed how civic action, including in rural areas and in small towns, can represent real community undertakings. And this means very frequently stop the abandonment of an area and instead promote marginal areas, promote the territory as it is. Importantly, in line with the Convention principles and criteria, such initiatives enable communities and institutions to develop decision-making capacities and manage their development processes. And that means according to their social, cultural, and economic dynamics. I would like to underline that with a few quotes. Now, let us listen to Giancarlo Kenolucci from Fontecchio in Italy. He says, "We've discovered that the community can be more than just spectators. They can be the authors of the dialogue processes. This is because the topics we worked with through a series of events originated from the ideas suggested by the communities themselves." And another quote from Georgia, from Machkani. "I think that the villages felt, with the help of the Faro Labs, that they're not alone. Until now, They thought nobody was interested in their cultural heritage, and now they are proud to share their experience, their initiative with other colleagues and other countries. We can safely say that the Faro Convention boldly marks a move from the traditional state and expert-driven responsibility for cultural heritage to what is called participatory governance. And I believe this represents truly an excellent move for an intergovernmental organization that is at the service of more than 800 million Europeans. Some more practice from Faro land. The Faro Convention Action Plan, an ongoing Council of Europe project, provides field-based knowledge and experience to member states, and it offers a platform for analysis and recommendations. Within this Faro Action Plan, we find also the Faro Walks, a very prominent tool. These walks are organized by those people living and working in a territory and allowing visitors to experience it in an unusual way, combining the stories of very many and different participants. The activity started in Marseille by the Hôtel du Nord Association, and again you find documentation and really interesting insights on the websites. Lastly, in the Faro land of the Council of Europe, I would like to mention the joint project, the Faro Way, that we run with the European Commission. It was set up in 2018 in the framework of the excellent European Year of Cultural Heritage to promote the convention, mobilize further signatures and ratifications of the Faro Convention, but also develop innovative tools. At this very moment, we are developing audiovisual applications to make Faro land even more accessible to an ever wider public. And we also offer, through this joint project, regional seminars and networking opportunities, both for citizens and for the authorities, national as well as local authorities. Faro land, you have understood that, is a good land. You probably agree with me on that. But are there challenges for the future? I would say 5, maybe many more. Start with the 5. We would like to achieve further engagement with the convention by all stakeholders. We would like to establish and improve ever better cooperation mechanisms in heritage between the authorities and civil society. This works very well, but of course it's not always easy. We would like to enhance the potential of the Faro Convention in creating more cohesive societies and make a real contribution to integration. And we would like to develop Faro's contribution to sustainable development goals. Lastly, a challenge is also building the pan-European Faro network of heritage communities. A word more on this, specifically the Faro Convention Principle 4, enhancing more cohesive societies, is at the center of our current attention and concerns. Migration is a phenomenon that will not easily go away. Many Faro-inspired initiatives deal with the relationship between integration and cultural heritage. One example, outstanding example, is Renovar a Mureria, an association that promotes the preservation of a central neighborhood in Lisbon that is actually challenged by gentrification, and features in particular the narratives by migrants related to the neighborhood's heritage. I did visit them. I shared cooking and dining one day and evening with them 2 years ago in Moria, and I was deeply impressed by the work undertaken by this association. But also the Faro Convention Principle 2, improving the living environment and the quality of life, is very high up on our political agenda. The task is here clearly to raise the awareness of Faro communities to climate change effects, on their environment and reflect this aspect in the Faro work. We are now turning to the last part of our journey, asking about how can heritage interpreters help, or asking about the relation between those who practically work on and visit heritage and those who give meaning and stories to it. The convention, the preamble of the convention speaks about involving everyone in society in the ongoing process of defining and managing the cultural heritage. Now, if every person has a right to engage with cultural heritage of their choice, while of course respecting the rights and freedoms of others, a multitude of definitions, concepts, and interpretations may result. And the convention's emphasis on heritage communities with active civil society involvement naturally leads to a multiplicity of legitimized actors. So much the more important it is to note the shared heritage and underline the notion of shared heritage through the meanings and values people attach to it. Finding out how best this can be shared with everyone being a potential author at the same time is very challenging. These are questions from many participatory projects, and I believe they are basic questions of democracy. In the Faro understanding, the narrative of a heritage community is never an exclusive one. Their action, therefore, is not narrow communitarism, but the essence of Faro requires what is referred to as multi-perspectivity in history and in history teaching. Hence, it will be key to reflect upon heritage sites from different perspectives and allow different interpretations. The co-creation of interpretation may help with multiple options of understanding. This would, of course, imply a readiness to look also at possible power relations and a readiness to change roles if needed. Ideally, everybody should be able to slip into the role of a heritage interpreter, manager, user, visitor, or activist. So what role for heritage interpreters then? Well, they could well support communities with their specific narrative and reveal the unsaid that often sustains a heritage community. And they could help diffuse the aggregated, or let's say augmented narrative to a larger public. The Freiburg Declaration of Interpret Europe from 2011 mentions such tasks very explicitly. As mediators between communities and the rest of society, interpreters could also play a major role in achieving sustainable development processes through the respectful use of cultural heritage. Collaboration between heritage communities and interpreters may become ever more important in the future to build such an alternative approach. And we all agree it is very much needed, this alternative approach. Clearly, the interpretation of heritage by a single professional group seems outdated at a time when people broadly engage and act on heritage. So who are the enablers in the end, and who enables the enablers? And some more thoughts and questions. How many readings are possible of one subject, of one object? Are we finally beyond concepts of the one truth? How can the idea of multiple affiliations and multi-perspectivity best cater for our interpretation needs and, at times, of course, identity needs in the globally firmly interwoven world that we live in? When asking these questions, the close interrelation between understanding heritage and understanding history and citizenship education becomes evident. Much could be said on this as well, given the Council of Europe's long-standing work in the education sector and its recent reference framework for competences for democratic culture. I actually often think that maybe it would be useful to consider ourselves at times as travelers on an exotic journey, and that at a moment when we're dealing with our own surroundings and well-known heritage. Our sometimes well-known boring surroundings. This role change may open our eyes, surprise, and make us understand the complexity of the presumably familiar, and thus understand better the roots of so many misunderstandings and conflicts. To close, and coming back to today's journey, let me thank the travel agency, Interpret Europe, who helps us all to better understand the human heritage voyage. Thank you very much for your attention and stamina during the Faro journey. I wish you every success now in this exciting conference. My colleagues, Francesc Pla and Giovanna Posnan, will be available and join the discussion later. They are indeed governing Faro land in Strasbourg. And by the way, they do that in a very participative and democratic manner. Thank you so much.